"You're lying," the judge laughed. Seconds later, the entire courtroom went silent. The words didn't just echo through the courtroom. They shattered something invisible, something fragile, something already hanging by a thread inside the man standing alone at the defense table. A quiet murmur followed, the kind that grows when people smell humiliation in the air, and then came the laughter, soft at first, then louder. The judge himself leaned back slightly, disbelief curling into amusement, but the man didn't laugh. He just stood there holding a worn folder in trembling hands, his tired eyes flickering not with anger, but with something far heavier, years of silence, sacrifice, and a truth no one had ever cared to hear. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that someone's story is never what it seems at first glance, take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to be told. His name was Arman Rahim. To most people in that courtroom, he was just another struggling single father fighting a custody case he had no chance of winning. His clothes were clean but worn, his shoes scuffed, his posture slightly bent, not from weakness but from the weight of responsibility he had carried alone for far too long. The case seemed simple on paper. His daughter, 8-year-old Alina, was at risk of being taken away due to allegations that Arman was unfit to provide a stable environment. The accusations came from distant relatives who had suddenly shown interest in the child after years of absence. They claimed Arman had no steady job, no support system, and no proper education. And in a world where appearances often decide outcomes, Arman looked exactly like the man they described. The judge glanced at the documents again, unimpressed. The lawyer representing the other side smirked confidently, already preparing for an easy win. Everything pointed toward one conclusion. Until Arman spoke. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't argue. He simply said something that no one expected. He claimed he spoke 11 languages fluently. The courtroom froze for a second. Then the laughter began. It wasn't cruel laughter, not entirely, but it was dismissive, patronizing, the kind that reduces a person to a joke. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, and asked for proof, almost as if entertaining a child's fantasy. Arman nodded slowly, his hands tightening around the folder, and then, one by one, he began. First he spoke in English, clear, calm, precise. Then Urdu, rich and emotional. Then Arabic, flowing like poetry. Then Spanish, then French, then Mandarin. With each language, his tone, accent, and rhythm shifted seamlessly. He wasn't just reciting memorized lines. He was communicating, expressing, existing within each language as if it were part of his soul. The laughter faded. The smirks disappeared. The judge leaned forward. By the time Arman reached the 11th language, the room had fallen into a silence so deep it felt almost sacred. No one moved. No one whispered. Even the lawyer who had been so confident minutes earlier now looked unsettled. But Arman wasn't finished. He slowly opened his folder and placed several documents on the table. Certificates, letters, translations, years of freelance work, legal documents, medical reports, international contracts, all translated by him. He explained, not with pride but with quiet honesty, that he had never held a formal job because he couldn't afford childcare. So he worked from home, taking whatever translation work he could find online. Every night, after putting Alina to sleep, he would sit by a dim lamp and work until dawn, translating words from one world into another, just to earn enough to keep the lights on. He had learned his first language from his mother, who passed away when he was young. The rest he taught himself, through borrowed books, free online courses, and sheer determination. Not for passion, not for ambition, for survival, for his daughter. As he spoke, the courtroom began to see him differently. Not as a failure, not as a man lacking education, but as someone who had built an invisible empire of knowledge, quietly, painfully, without recognition. The judge's expression changed. The amusement was gone, replaced by something closer to respect and regret. But the story didn't end there. The opposing lawyer tried to regain control, pointing out that despite his skills, Arman still struggled financially. He argued that the child deserved a more stable environment, one with wealth, structure, and support. And for a moment it seemed like logic might still win over truth. Armand looked down, his shoulders heavy. He knew this argument. He had lived it. Every unpaid bill, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, it all came rushing back. But then something unexpected happened. A voice spoke from the back of the courtroom. It was an elderly man, a representative from a well-known international agency. He had been present that day for an entirely different case, but he had heard everything. He stood up, his voice steady but firm, and addressed the judge. He explained that he had been searching for a rare kind of talent, someone who not only understood multiple languages but could feel them, interpret them with cultural sensitivity and emotional intelligence. Someone exactly like Armand. He offered him a position on the spot, a stable, well-paying role that could change everything. The courtroom shifted again, this time with a different kind of energy, hope. Armand didn't react immediately. He looked confused, almost hesitant, as if good news was something he had forgotten how to process. His eyes filled with tears, but he quickly wiped them away, trying to remain composed. The judge cleared his throat, his voice softer now. He acknowledged the new development and paused the proceedings to reconsider the case in light of everything that had been revealed. But more importantly, something deeper had changed. The room no longer saw Armand as a man on trial. They saw him as a man who had been misunderstood. Days later, the final decision was announced. Custody remained with Armand, not out of sympathy but out of recognition. Recognition of his effort, his sacrifice, his capability as a father. Recognition of a truth that had been hidden beneath assumptions. That night, Armand returned home with Elena. Their small apartment looked the same as always, simple, quiet, imperfect. But something inside it had changed. As Elena hugged him tightly, laughing and asking 100 questions he could barely keep up with, Armand realized that for the first time in years, he could breathe. Not because life had suddenly become easy, but because someone had finally listened. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something real, take a moment to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe. Stories like this remind us that behind every quiet person is a loud, untold story. And before we reach the end, tell me in the comments, have you ever been judged wrongly and then proven people wrong? Because Armand's story isn't just about languages or courtrooms, it's about the silent battles people fight every single day. It's about the strength it takes to keep going when no one believes you. And it's about the moment when the world finally stops and listens. As the lights dimmed in that small apartment, Armand sat by the same old lamp, but this time he wasn't alone in the darkness. He had his daughter, he had his dignity, and for the first time in a long time, he had a future.